Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to be making a very simple recipe from Deep Run Roots, Vivian Howard's cookbook. We're going to be making basic roasted beets. I have enough beets here for about a recipe and a half. I didn't have quite enough for a double recipe, but that's great because we're going to use these to make something else tomorrow. So my amounts are going to be a little bit different if you're following along in the book, but that's okay. So I have washed my beets. I've scrubbed them with like a vegetable scrubber, and I cut off the extra little long tails. She doesn't tell you to cut the tops off or anything, and they're not peeled. They're just washed, scrubbed beets. And all I'm going to do is put in some water, not a whole lot. And then we are going to drizzle some olive oil over top, which kind of feels weird because I don't know what it's going to do with this whole steaming thing, but we're not going to salt these yet. We're not going to season them at all right now. We're just roasting them sort of as is. And when they're done, we're going to peel them while they're still warm. And then we are going to flavor them at that point while they are still warm. Because when they're still warm, you can get more flavor into them still. If you wait till they cool, they won't absorb any of the flavors. I would not suggest that you do this in a metal pan because this water is going to turn purple and it might stain. Even the white sort of baking dishes, those will be fine. It'll look purple, but it should come right off. But metal, in my experience, tends to stain a little bit more easily. Anyway, so now we're gonna cover this with aluminum foil. And I just have heavy duty because, sorry, that's loud. I know my sound guy's not gonna like it. I'm using heavy duty because it's wider and it's just easier for me, and it is less likely to poke through the beets are. So cover it as tightly as you can because these are going to basically steam in the oven, which I have preheated to 375 degrees. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in the oven and she says it'll take 40 minutes to an hour and a half. I'm gonna check them at 40 minutes. I do have some that are smaller and some that are huge, as you recall. So I think it'll probably take a little bit longer than that. But when we take them out, what we're looking for is for them to be able to pierce them with a knife and for the knife to go in very easily. So I'm gonna have my paring knife and I'll just check those. I'll check them at 40 minutes. But I doubt that they'll be done then. But we'll be back when they are done and I'll let you know how long they take. My beets took a really long time in the oven. They were in there for probably at least an hour and a half before the largest ones were done. I just left them all in there and then we left them on top of the stove with the foil on top still for 5 minutes as per the recipe. And then we let them sit for a little while without the foil on it to kind of cool off a little bit until I can handle them. So hopefully I can handle them. They've been out of the oven probably at least 15 minutes at this point, but they're still pretty warm. Your cutting board is going, if you use red beets anyway, your cutting board is going to get very dirty or very red, and so are your hands. I generally use some paper towels to help me peel these. But that's what we're doing at this point. We're going to peel these, kind of cut off the root end, the stem end, and then I just use the paper towels to kind of get the peel, the skin off of the beets. Sometimes if it's a little stubborn, I might cut off a small piece. Like sometimes where there might be a blemish in the skin, it might be a little more stubborn. They're really hot, but you want to peel these while they are hot. And make sure you get all of the skin off. There we go. Oh, and I was going to show you that like I used a paring knife and just made sure it will go in all the way without too much resistance, and then they're done. And really they all kind of took about the same amount of time. The small ones weren't done much before the larger ones, but now I'm going to slice them into wedges. You can slice them into basically however you want to eat them, but she suggests 1/4 inch thick, see my hands are all pink, 1/4 inch thick slices or thin wedges. And we are going to use these for another recipe, which is the same. So I'm going to take these and slice them up and put them in this really big bowl. And when I'm done, we're going to season them. So I'm just going to keep doing this, and you probably will either see this on fast forward or not see it at all, because I've got 6 more beets to peel. So that took a while, but they're still warm, or at least the ones I can still feel heat here. So now I'm going to add the seasoning. I'm going to add some salt. Now this is the amount that she says to start with, but then you should taste them and see if they need any more of any of these things. So that was salt. This is sugar. And then I have some fresh squeezed lemon juice. I only had like a small spoon clean besides my whole set, so I'm using a small spoon. All right, so that is the amount that the recipe calls for my like 1.5 recipes of it. I do want to say that some of my beets did not peel super easily, but I just used my paring knife and peeled them kind of like I would peel a potato. The ones that were sort of had more rough skin didn't peel quite as easily, even though they were all pretty well done. Pretty tender, sliced very nicely. All right. I've got these tossed, and now because at this point they will take the flavor if you add more of anything. I'm going to taste one of them. Good on salt. I think it needs a little more lemon juice. So I'm going to add a little bit more of that, and maybe a tiny bit of sugar. I was just missing a sort of acidic balance to the really earthy taste of beets. Trying to find the ones that were sort of not as pretty to taste. Definitely a little more sugar. And since my spoon is wet, I'm just going to use my fingers. Put a little more on there. And I'm going to call that good. That is our basic roasted beets. So we are going to serve a few of these as is. Tonight you can serve them warm or chilled, up to you. Can reheat them if you want, or serve them kind of like right now. But we are also going to use these for another recipe, and you'll probably see that next week, but I will let you know in just a second how this turned out, what the family thought. Yeah, back in a sec. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make basic roasted beets from Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots cookbook. It was a very basic recipe, but it's a great base for other recipes. As you will see in our next video, we did use the leftovers. We tried them as is, and then used the leftovers for another recipe that's in the same book. As is, they're really good, but you do really have to adjust the sugar and lemon juice and salt at the end, because beets could be sweeter or earthier, or you never know what you're going to need. So that's really something that you have to do on a per recipe basis. I think the first time I made these, I have made them before, it was perfectly fine as is, but these needed a little more tweaking to taste good to us. But it's a great basic beet recipe, and it's really easy. You just sort of stick them in the oven. So if you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else.